Well, they're coming. Donald Trump said they were coming, and they have finally arrived. I'm talking about these white African refugee farmers. And because of these refugee farmers' arrival, the mainstream media is out there lying and actually having an all-out conniption fit and literally sparking a rebellion against Donald J. Trump. I thought that the mainstream media was supposed to be on the side of legal immigrants coming into the country, but unfortunately, this doesn't seem to be the case. I don't know about you, but this article or this entire report is going to piss you off. I am done with the mainstream media. We need to just turn them off completely. But let's start first with what is going on right now over in South Africa, at least for the past 40, 30 some odd years, maybe even longer than that. There has been all-out genocide happening against the white farmers. In fact, Donald Trump tweeted about it not that long ago, back in April. And he says, how can we expect to go to South Africa and go to this G20 meeting when this genocide and land confiscation is happening in Africa? In fact, here's some evidence to prove my point.
There's nothing you can do. There's nothing this parliament can do. With or without you, people are going to occupy land. We require no permission from you, from the president, from no one. We don't care. We can do whatever you want to do. Who are you to tell us whether we can occupy land or not? We are going to occupy land. Yes. South African, occupy land. That's who we are.
Honorable member,
want to do, you can withdraw my membership from this useless parliament.
Honorable. Yes, honorable member.
The mayor of DA in PE is a white man. So these people, when you want to hit them hard, go after a white man. They feel a terrible pain because you have touched a white man. Not because Mashaba and Soli will not be touched. They will be touched, don't worry. But we are starting with this whiteness. We are cutting the throat of whiteness.
So what you just saw was the parliament there and leaders in South Africa literally calling for, white farmers' land to be confiscated and, quite frankly, for them to, be killed. I mean, this is just sick stuff. And the mainstream media out there is, by the way, saying this is not happening. And you saw how big the crowd was in that video. And by the way, that video obviously comes from here. And I could go on and show you clip after clip after clip. But here's some more of what's going on. This is on Biz News. Maliam's Kill the Board chant sparks global backlash. What did he say? Well, on Human Rights Day, EFF leader Julius Maliam once again led a crowd of red shirts to chant, shoot to kill the boar, which means kill the farmer. And we also have New York Times, killing of white farmer becomes a flashpoint in South Africa. So obviously there is something going on, and the mainstream media, as I'm going to prove to you in a moment, is ignoring it. I've got a lot to share with you. You're not going to want to miss this. But first, I have to give a shout out because I wouldn't be here if it was not for Noble Gold Investments. Here's the hard truth. Every 6 years, your dollar loses half of its buying power. That's $100,000 in savings today. But hey, by 2031, that's going to look more like $50,000. There is a way to protect and preserve your money, and that is with solid gold. This is why I want to encourage you to check out Noble Gold Investments. They make it real easy to hold gold, silver, precious metals. They even ship it to your door as well. So give them a call at the number on the screen. Let them know that you heard it on Lisa Haven. And right now, with every qualified account, you can get this 10-ounce silver American flag bar. So make sure you let them know you heard it on Lisa Haven, or go to lisahavengold.com, fill out this information, click get it now, and they'll send you that free gold and silver investment guide. If you want more information, click the more button if you're on your phone, or click the link below in the box. And by the way, there's always a risk to investing. There is never a guarantee. All right. So what exactly is going on in South Africa, and what's the truth? Well, for that, we have to go back a little bit to a policy that the president of South Africa signed, saying that they can confiscate your land and not give you any compensation for it. Wink and a nod at the farmers there. BBC. South African president signs controversial land seizure law. South African president has signed into law a bill allowing land seizures by the state without compensation, a move that has put him at odds with members of his government. Black people only own a small fraction of the farmland nationwide, more than 30 years after the end of the racist system of apartheid. The majority remains with the white minority. This has led to frustration and anger over the slow pace of reform. Now, to put this very simply, what went on about 50 some odd years ago is basically apartheid. And what that is a system of institutionalized racial segregation. Very unfortunate time in history. But white people owned a majority of land, and then you had the black people, or at least the farmland. So it was a very unjust system. But fast forward 50, 60 years, now we have the white farmers being attacked. There are cases of torturing, there are cases of killing, they have been killed, and there's cases of rape and everything else under the sun. They are now highly mistreated. And the unfortunate part is they are suffering for the crimes of their ancestors. Sounds similar to what is going on here in the United States of America. We're talking about a 50-year span here. So they're going after the families of the owners during the apartheid. So very unfortunate time in history. I'm going to lay that out there. But either way, it's just disturbing. So Donald Trump steps in and he goes, you know what? I don't like this land expropriation, that happened in South Africa. So I'm going to do something about it. Here's the Epic Times. Trump to suspend funding to South Africa over the land expropriation. So he basically says, you know what? If there's going to be these racial disparities in land ownership, where you're just going to take land as the government there in South Africa and you're not going to give any compensation, we don't want anything to do with that. In fact, here is the executive order, the fact sheet kind of on the executive order that Trump signed. And he says, addressing human rights violation in South Africa. On Friday, President Trump signed an executive order to address serious human rights violations occurring in South Africa. By the way, this was back in February, before he brought in the refugees, as encapsulated in its recent Land Confiscation Act, right, which is the one that I just showed you here. He goes, to seize disfavored citizens' property without compensation, the government of South Africa blatantly discriminates against ethnic minority descendants of settler groups, which they are. He's saying you're discriminating against one race, which would be the whites, because they are descendants of a certain group that committed, say, atrocities in the past. And he goes, we're not going to handle that. As long as South Africa continues to support bad actors on a world stage and allows violent acts on innocent, disfavored minority farmers, the U.S. will stop aid and assistance to the country. And I say a big, fat, freaking amen to that. Donald Trump has thus far now brought some of these refugees in. And in fact, the numbers range anywhere from 49 to 59 as far as how many. And I want you to notice these are the refugees that were coming and have landed. Take a look at them. And I want you to notice something about them. They're not waving South African flags. They are literally holding the American flag there. Their families, they're not all a bunch of men. They're walking in. They're literal families, men, women, children who are coming into this land under the refugee program. Now, I know most of us are familiar with the refugee program, but listen to what Stephen Miller has to say regarding this refugee program and why these people were brought in. Take a watch.
What's happening in South Africa fits the textbook definition of why the refugee program was created. This is persecution based on a protected characteristic, in this case, race. So this is race-based persecution. The refugee program is not intended as a solution for global poverty, and historically it has been used that way. Wherever there's global poverty or wherever there's dysfunctional governments, then the U.S. refugee program comes in, swoops people up, relocates them to America, and you have multi-generational problems. Even into the second and third generation, you have endemic poverty, you have crime issues, you have integration issues. The U.S. refugee program in America has been a catastrophic failure. I mean, if you look, for example, at the Twin Cities area, I mean, just in terms of markers of educational outcomes, in terms of public safety, in terms of welfare use. I mean, it's been a complete public policy failure. And so this is an example of the president returning the refugee program to what it was intended to be used as.
So these people are attacked and being attacked in their country, which they were born in, right? They weren't born here in the United States. It is race-based prosecution. Therefore, you're allowed into the country. In fact, Donald Trump addressed the mainstream media regarding all of this because the mainstream media, as you're going to see in a moment, is constantly lying about what is happening to these farmers. Take a watch.
Killed, and we don't want to see people be killed. Now, South Africa leadership is coming to see me, I understand, sometime next week. And, we're supposed to have I guess a G20 meeting there or something, but we're having a G20 meeting. I don't know how we can go unless that situation's taken care of, but it's a genocide that's taking place that you people don't want to write about, but it's a terrible thing that's taking place, and farmers are being killed. They happen to be white, but whether they're white or black makes no difference to me, but white farmers are being brutally killed, and their land is being confiscated in South Africa. And the newspapers and the media, television media, doesn't even talk about it. If it were the other way around, they'd talk about it. That would be the only story they'd talk about. And I don't care who they are. I don't care about their race, their color. I don't care about their height, their weight. I don't care about anything. I just know that what's happening is terrible. I have people that live in South Africa. They say it's a terrible situation taking place. So we've essentially extended citizenship to those people to escape from that violence and come here.
If it were the other way around, and it were black people getting killed as farmers and the white men were doing the murdering, it would be all over the freaking mainstream media. This is why I say forget the mainstream media. Subscribe here. Show mainstream media a big, fat, friendly middle finger and join 500,000 other people here and subscribe to the channel, and make sure you hit that all button so you are fully subscribed so YouTube sends out the notifications. But that is so true. The mainstream media is just like, oh, we're going to ignore this, pretend it's not happening. In fact, the mainstream media is out there saying, oh, none of it is true. Let me just show you a small handful, and believe me, there are hundreds of these articles, if not thousands. Here we have news.com.au, genocide lie behind Trump's white refugee claim. Here we have PBS, which we were funding with our money for a very long time. Watch, Trump claims white farmers are targeted of genocide in South Africa, which they tend to say, oh no, that's not happening. And then BBC, claims of white genocide, not real. South African court rules. So because the court rules that in South Africa, who also passed, the confiscation law regarding taking the land. So because they say it must be true. It's laughable. It literally is. They're as bad as our government, at least the liberal side. And then we have PBS, another one here. Persecution of South African whites, a false narrative, president says as Musk repeats genocide claim. Then we also have Africa themselves saying it. No, South Africa hasn't barred white-owned farmers from agricultural export permits. Old claim is still wrong. And then, of course, they accuse Donald Trump of, you guessed it, white supremacy. Here is the GRIO on Yahoo News. Trump accused of expanding global white supremacist agenda with a South African refugee program. Gee, Wally, look at that. There's hundreds of those articles. And the mainstream media is literally on the news now saying, oh, Donald Trump's being racist. He only wants to bring white people in and not black people in. And Donald Trump made it very clear that that is not what it's about. And it absolutely isn't. As Stephen Miller said, it is about refugees who are getting murdered and tortured and giving them refuge in the United States. If that's happening en masse to anyone, right, you should have refuge in our country. But this is not what is going on at our United States southern border. Nope. You see, the mainstream media doesn't like these refugees because they'll more than likely vote Republican. God forbid that. And they're white, it doesn't fit their narrative. Rather racist, if you ask me. And they're all accusing Donald Trump of being racist. It's sick in the freak. It makes me sick. Meanwhile, by the way, just so you know, the government there at the Department of Relations there in South Africa is denying the whole thing. Just here you have this May 9th, 2025. After Donald Trump called attention to it, they, of course, denied it. And it says, we reiterate that allegations of discrimination are unfounded. The South African Police Service's statistics on farm-related crimes do not support allegations of violent crime targeted at farmers generally or any particular race. And then it goes on to say at the very bottom, moreover, even if there are allegations of discrimination, it is our view that these do not meet the threshold of persecution. Oh, there it is, required under domestic and international refugee law. So it must be true if their government is saying it. Never mind the videos I showed you in the very front. And you know what makes this even more sickening is the Episcopal Church is saying, we don't want anything to do with these migrants. Yeah, really, take a look at this. I'm going to go straight to the horse's mouth. This is on the episcopalchurch.org, their own website. This is the Office of Public Affairs. And here's a letter from their bishop, Sean Rowe, on migration ministries, right? And he's addressing the Episcopal Church. I'm going to hone in on a section right here where it says, just over 2 weeks ago, the federal government informed the Episcopal Migration Ministries that under the terms of the federal grant, we are expected to resettle white Afrikaners from South Africa, whom the U.S. government has classified as refugees. In light of our church's steadfast commitment to racial justice, unless they're white, and reconciliation in our historic ties with the Anglican Church of South Africa, we are not able to take this step. Accordingly, we have determined that by the end of the federal fiscal year, we will conclude our refugee resettlement grant agreements with the federal government. I want to be clear about why we made this decision. It has been painful to watch one group of refugees settled in a highly unusual manner receive preferential treatment over many others who have been waiting in refugee camps or dangerous conditions for years. I am saddened and ashamed that many of the refugees who are being denied entrance into the U.S. and brave people who worked alongside our military in Iraq and Afghanistan now face danger at home because of their service to our country. I also grieve victims of religious persecution, including Christians who have not been granted refugee in recent months. Now, I will agree with that last part there. Unfortunately, there are Christians in countries like Syria who need to have access to come to our country because they are being highly persecuted. Same with like Falun Gong in China. They are getting highly persecuted. This is what the refugee program was meant for. Not for people running in at the border who aren't being vetted, a good chunk of which, obviously, there's good people and bad people within that. There's families and not families, terrorists and not terrorists, gang members and murderers, right? Coming across the border, they're unable to vet them and they're not vetting them. And now we have Tren de Aragua, MS-13 gang members, fentanyl and everything in our entire country. Meanwhile, the mainstream media is out there having a rebellion and conniption fit over 49, 59 white people who actually are undergoing prosecution, persecution, threats of death, and the whole 9 yards. Look, if there is actual persecution happening, let's negotiate here. I don't care what the color of your skin. It doesn't matter if you're white, black, Mexican, orange, yellow. I don't care. Gay, not gay. I don't care. None of that matters. Muslim, Christian, I don't care. As long as you come to our country and aren't sitting there causing violence and promoting violence, and you're here and you're not like, hey, I fucking hate America, kill Americans or whatever. This is ridiculous. You come here and you be an American citizen and you follow our rules and laws. Great. If you don't, that's another story. Meanwhile, by the way, we have literal leaders in major offices, mayors, congressional leaders, state level leaders, who are literally going to ICE facilities, breaking into them, or not breaking in, let me clarify, blocking them, blocking ambulances and the whole 9 yards is just disturbing. By the way, if you want information on what I just said, gettorestrictedrepublic.com. I am putting out a big report on that tomorrow morning. And I want you guys to see it. Use the coupon code Lisa and the number 5. That's pennies on the dollar per day to go there and subscribe and really support what I do and support what Justice Night does. It's a way that we're able to stay here on air with you guys in light of all the censorship. Thank God we are still growing and you are a part of that. Anyhow, with all of that, can't wait to read your comments. I love you all. I'm Lisa Haven, signing out.